What it is, y'all? Welcome to the Monty Mentality podcast. At least that's what I'm calling it for now. It's our first rodeo here at Greenhouse Studio. Shout out to them and shout out to my cousin Projects for bringing me here. Grateful for that to be the first one to get this thing rocking. So we can just get right into it. Just to tell you a little bit about me, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Brandon, of course, and I go by Brandon or B-Monty or Bill, whichever one you want. Doesn't matter to me. Was born in D.C. at the height of the crack era. Excuse me. Back when Reagan was still in office, so that's how old I am. Might be 35, but my body 25. So doesn't matter how old you are; it's how old you feel, right? Raised primarily in PG County. Graduated from Sarasville, went to Dale State, and graduated from Bowie State. So shout out to HBCUs. Also proud uncle of two nieces, three nephews, two bonus nieces, bonus nephew, and also shout out to my goddaughter Zai. Love you. Also an avid NBA, and as you can see, Laker fan. I mean, of course, we struggling out here, but don't worry about that right now. We going through some things, but you know, hey, we won the 2020 championship. Yeah, it's the bubble, blah blah. Don't care. When's the last time your team won? All right, that's what I thought. Also love Sudoku and I'm supreme gym bro. Love the gym, and I'm also really into personal development. And generally, this podcast is probably mostly going to be about sports, but just things that generally interest me. And then y'all could let me know what you might want to hear, or maybe you could come on and speak your mind on some things. So, but let's get into the meat of this now. Today, the main thing we're going to talk about that I'm sure everyone's going to be reasonable about. Everybody's going to be totally rational and not give me a whole bunch of crap for it. Top 10 NBA players. Top 10 players in the NBA today. Now, first off, before we even get started on this order, I need to make clear what the criteria that we're doing this is. This isn't who would you want for one game, even one playoff game, one playoff series. No, we're doing this based off if the season started today, you got an 82 game season plus the playoffs. So that's the first thing. Second thing, the goal is to maximize your chances of winning a championship with this player. So that's the thing. We're not just trying to win 50 games and then get bounced in the second round. We're trying to maximize our chances at a championship when we're raking these dudes. All right. Next thing, the players are put on a random team. So it's not just who they play for now. If I was to put you on any random squad with any type of teammates, any type of coach, market, whatever, that is what we're judging you on. So things that we're valuing here isn't just how you thrive in your current situation, is how would you thrive in any situation. You might not have the perfect set of teammates. How well do you play with other great players? Because sometimes great players don't always mesh. So bonus points if you're more likely to be able to integrate with other guys versus, if you're more of a one man band type of guy, right? Another key one, current injuries are wiped away. However, and this will figure with some guys here, if you have a track record of getting injured or a track record of not getting injured, that will factor into where you rank on here. We will factor that. And then the last big one is I put more weight on how you perform in the playoffs, meaning either you've proven you can do it in the playoffs at the highest levels, maybe you haven't gotten a chance to prove it, but we might give you a little bit of benefit of doubt, but we might not put you as high because we haven't seen it yet. There's no proof of concept. So yeah, those are the things that we're going to be looking at. Now to get into the actual order, but before we do that, we're going to get through some honorable mentions. And this last one I know is going to get me in trouble, but let's get through them. First off, shout out to Jalen Brunson, Paul George, Tyrese Halliburton. Those guys were, well, Jalen Brunson wasn't really considered, but I just wanted to mention him because he has really been doing things for the Knicks, and I thought he deserved some acknowledgement. Paul George, always solid. You know, has a reputation as a playoff choker, but actually also has some playoff bangers, low key. But not quite getting to that top 10 right now in his current state. He was once upon a time, but not right now. Tyrese Halliburton, he has the potential to get into the top 10 one day when he's healthy, because he hasn't been healthy for a little bit because of the hamstring issue. He's probably a top 5 offensive player in basketball, arguably the best playmaker in basketball right now, but not quite there due to his maybe scoring limitations and defensive limitations. And also, like I said, he hasn't played a playoff game yet. So we don't even know what it looks like in a playoff setting where, teams can adjust to you more aptly. Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, that's one that a lot of people are really high on. A lot of people think that's the future face of the league. And he has the potential definitely to be a top 10 player. Probably will be sooner rather than later, but not quite yet. Still has some defensive consistency he needs to sort out. Definitely some playmaking needs to sort out, and decision making, especially in crunch time. Now, he could get up to this list after a strong playoff showing this year, but not there yet. Devin Booker. Devin Booker, we saw him killing the playoffs last year. But, this year he's a little bit more down. And like I said, this is this is rough to leave some of these guys off, but as you'll see, this list is nearly impossible. Damian Lillard, based on last year, he'd have been right knocking on the door. This year in Milwaukee, with what's going on with that transition, also he's got some personal stuff going on that might be affecting him, but right now, can't really put him in that top 10 right now. Jimmy Butler, as we know about some of his playoff heroics in the past, but he's right on the door. And mind you, there's about 3 or 4 of these guys that could easily, including him, that could easily be in this top 10. But Jimmy's playoff performances are actually low key more up and down than you would think, because you had that great series with Milwaukee last year, but then you got the no-show against Denver in the finals. So people forget about that sometimes. Also, he cruises through the regular season a lot. And, those regular season wins do matter. I mean, that's why Miami was only a 8th seed last year. Would have been a 7th seed if not for the play-in, but that's matter. Now, this is the one that's going to get me in big, 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 big trouble. This one more honorable mention left. Now, if you notice, I have not mentioned anyone from this team yet, from the Lakers. And there is a Laker in my top 10. But unfortunately, it's probably not the one you're thinking. The one that is not in the top 10, in all due respect, this man might be the greatest basketball player we've ever seen. He's a lot of people's GOAT. He's my GOAT depending on what day you ask. But unfortunately, LeBron is just outside the top 10 for me right now. And I know, go ahead, send your hate, send whatever you got. But the thing with LeBron is the reason why he's just outside of 1, he's just turned 39. And we see how great he still is at 39. But, father time comes for everybody. And even with LeBron now, you chip a little bit away every year. And it's just not the same as it was before. I wish he was still top 10, top 5 even, because obviously that would help the Lakers a lot if he was. But he's not able to win one-on-one like he used to. I don't trust that he's a 40% three-point shooter all of a sudden. His mid-range game right now is not that hot. And, defensively, he's still good, but, there's times where he's not going to really try. And so, unfortunately, LeBron is not in this top 10 list, though. Like I said, he easily could be, though. Like, ask me tomorrow, ask me next week. It could change. But that's how this list was a nightmare to put together once I actually went through it. So, but now we can get to the actual top 10. And coming in at number 10 is Jason Tatum. Now, Tatum, the reason why I can't put him lower than this, or I mean, I could, but the reason why I didn't is because, one, he's very durable. I know he's going to play most of the regular season. He's going to show up for most of that. In the playoffs, more of a mixed bag, right? Like you have that 51-point game in Game 7 against Philly last year. You had that 46-point game in Milwaukee 2 years ago. But then you have the clunker in the finals against the Warriors, or the up and down against Miami last year where they fall down 3-0. Now, people forget that he sprained his ankle in Game 7, and that might have changed that series. But with Tatum, it's just there's a little something missing that stops him from getting much further up than this, because even though he is a really good scorer, he's not that great in isolation. He is a really good defender, but he's not like a defensive linchpin in the sense of, oh, we have a good defense because we have Jason Tatum. He's just really good all around, but there are some little chinks in that armor. Now, next, number 9, Joel Embiid. Now, if you could just turn injuries off forever, Embiid would be higher than this. There's no doubt about that. Like, he was probably having the best regular season of anyone before he went down with this meniscus that he got just now. But that's the thing with Embiid. As good of a scorer as he is, as good as a defender as he is when he's locked in, it's always something with him that always comes up, especially around playoff time. And that's part of why, even though in the regular season he's been a top 2-3 player the last 4 years or so, every time you get to the playoffs, something is off with him. Where it's a knee here, it's a facial fracture here, something's always happening. And so that's why he's not higher up on this list. But like I said, based on just pure talent, he would be top 5. But with those concerns, I can't in good conscience put him higher than that, because again, we're trying to win a championship here. So now the next one, this one's going to be controversial, I understand. This is the Laker I was talking about. Anthony Davis is going to be my number 8. And you might say, oh, well, I mean, Anthony Davis, he's too soft, or, he's too injury prone. Well, you look at the facts, Anthony Davis has only missed 4 games this year. Now, he might miss 5 tonight because of what happened on Saturday against Golden State. But, I mean, he's played more games than almost anyone on this list. And then you saw the main reason the Lakers got to the conference finals last year was because of Anthony Davis. Even though he was inconsistent on offense, he was not inconsistent on defense. And he might still be the best defensive player in the league in the playoffs when it really matters most. With his rim protection, he still has enough mobility to where he's not going to get totally cooked on switches. And then, of course, he still has that offensive rebounding. He can still be a great secondary scorer. Yeah, he's not a guy that you're just going to throw the ball and say, hey, go make something happen. But he's still a ridiculous pick and roll threat. And when the jumper's going, he's very tough to deal with. And so with that total package, I think Anthony Davis is probably one of the more underrated superstars of this generation. Yes, he doesn't deal with physicality well, and like I said, he can't be a go-to scorer. But if he can be your best defensive player and you compare him with someone who can be that go-to scorer, then I mean we've seen that formula work already, 4 years ago. So that's why Anthony Davis is number 8. Number 7, this guy was pretty hard for me to rank, and that was someone who's going to be probably finish second in MVP this year, and that's going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from Oklahoma City. Now, the reason why he's so hard to rank is because just based on this regular season alone, I mean, he's like a top 2-3 player, right? But we haven't seen him at this level in the playoffs yet, and that's the big question. And how is his game going to translate? Is he going to be getting those same foul calls that he's getting now? Is he going to be able to get to the basket with such impunity? He's also in a very favorable situation in Oklahoma City. He's always playing with a shooting center, which is very ideal for his game, which is based on, getting into the paint and the fact that you can't stop him from getting in there. What's going to happen, in the playoffs when teams can adjust, refs swallow their whistles more? We don't know that yet. We can try to project that, and so I'm giving him some respect here, putting him this high. But, he can't go – I can't put him any higher than this right now because of, like I said, those questions of we don't know what that's going to look like. Number 6, this is a lot of respect for this one, but Steph Curry is going to be my number 6 because he was the best player on the championship team just 2 years ago. He's still the best shooter in the league, even if, he's not quite the mover he was, in his prime. He's older than me. He's just turned 36 this month. Pretty much no one has ever been the best player in the league at 36 years old, not even LeBron. So, but I'm giving him some deference here also because there's just no one else that stands out enough that much for me to put him lower than this for now. Now, if you ask me this in June, this tune very well might change. But right now, I got to give Steph Curry that respect. And the same thing for number 5, Kevin Durant. Now, the great thing about Kevin Durant is that he can play with anybody because he can play off ball, he can put the ball in his hands. Probably the best scorer in league history, not named Michael Jordan. Yeah, I said that. He can play with any type of star. The way that he can score, and he can also play make, and he can also ramp up his defense when he needs to. He's been a part of a lot of successful defensive teams in his career. So, still giving Kevin Durant that respect, even at 35 years old. He's still doing it. So, I would still trust KD over most of these other guys. Now, number 4, this guy was also very difficult for me to rank right now because of that injury concerns that we have, and that is Kawhi Leonard. Now, the reason why I put Kawhi ahead of some of these other guys is one, he is a bit younger. You do have those injuries concerns, like I said, but when he has made it to the playoffs and when we have seen him, very few guys have gotten to that level that he can get to. And, his scoring game is just so unstoppable. We know he can ramp up his defense when he needs to. And, when Kawhi's on, there's very few like him now. He could easily get way lower on this list because of those injury concerns, like I said. He hasn't made it through a healthy playoffs since the bubble. So hopefully we get to see him make it through this whole playoffs this year, and we can see, does he still have that gear? And right now I'm going to say I would bet on that right now, but we'll see in June. Number 3, I was surprised that I ended up with this guy this high because I was not expecting that coming in. But when I actually went through it, I was like, who else I'm going to put here? And that's Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is probably the second best player on the offensive end in basketball right now, at least definitely in the regular season and maybe even in the playoffs. We've seen him kill in the playoffs. We've seen him lead a team to a conference finals 2 years ago, and he's only gotten better since then. Now, the Mavs don't have the best team around him. He does have Kyrie, but they're lacking in a lot of other ways. They don't have really good defenders around him, but part of the reason why Luka isn't challenging for best player in the league is because you have to make those adjustments around him because he himself can't really guard. So you can only have but so many liabilities out there before it becomes a real issue, especially against the best teams. But outside of Denver, there's probably not a better offensive force in the league. And like I said, he just turned 25. The arrow is pointing up. And remember, we're starting the season today and moving forward, what is it, 7, 8 months, how long the season is. So I would bet on that over a long haul over a lot of these other guys. So that's how Luka ended up number 3. Top 2 was pretty easy, to be honest with you. Number 2 is Giannis. So Giannis is my number 2 because arguably, at least in the playoff setting, he could still be one of the 2 or 3 best defenders in the league. He is a go-to offensive option, though I think ideally you would have a better offensive player than him next to him, which Milwaukee actually does now, assuming Dame handles his business. But, he can be very dangerous off ball. We know how dangerous he is around the rim. And like I said, that defense, he's probably at worst top 5 in the league when he's locked in. And in the playoffs, he can ramp it up. I would bet on that over everyone on this list but one, and that is the most likely MVP, the reigning finals MVP, the best passing big man we have ever seen, probably the best paint touch we've ever seen, and that's Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is my number 1. That was easy. Probably the most unsolvable offensive force I'm not going to say we've ever seen, but definitely perhaps at the big man position. It's between him and maybe Shaq, in my opinion, that are contending for the best offensive big we've ever seen. Like, he has no real weaknesses. You can't switch on him because if you switch, you're basically cooked. He's going to cook whoever switches on to him. Even big wings can't deal with him. And then, you know, if you double team him, you're dead because, he sees everything and he can make every pass, even passes you didn't even know existed. So now, the thing that stops Jokic from being an undisputed number one, though it's easy for me, but you do have questions about his defense. He's not a good rim protector. He does struggle against teams that can play spread pick and roll. Excuse me, spread pick and roll. But the offense just too good, man. Like I can't go against that. So for those of you listening, let me know what you think about that. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure everyone's going to agree with me and everyone's going to have no real questions, no real qualms about that list. So that's great for y'all. Now, let's move on to the next thing, which is gym talk. Now, we're only a few months away from summer, right? Now, I know some of y'all are like, maybe it's too late for you to get in shape. I mean, it's never too late. There's never a bad time to start, right? But the main thing I want to talk about today is, as someone who loves the gym, is consistency. But really, what you want to ask is, what is the key to consistency? Because that's something I always think about and I try to convey to people is, well, how do you get consistent? Because it's easy to say consistency is the most important thing. That's true. But how do you become consistent? And I think there's two main things you want to think about. I'll get to the most important one second. The first one is you want to think about what style of working out most resonates with you. So, do you like boxing? Do you like running? Do you like lifting weights? How do you like lifting weights? Do you like just lifting the most amount of weight you can? Do you like lifting to look a certain way? Like, these are the kind of questions that you could ask and find what resonates with you the most. And that is one way to ensure that you're more likely to be consistent, because it's hard to be consistent with something that you hate. So if you can find what resonates with you the most, that will help you a lot in the consistency game. But the other big thing, and this one is probably even more important, how important is it to you really? The thing that got me consistent was one day I just woke up and was like, look, I'm tired of looking and feeling like this. Like, I know that I'm going to feel a lot better if I get this together. And look, however long it takes, I don't care. However many mistakes I make, I don't care. But I'm going to find a way to make this happen. And at the end of the day, nobody can do that for you. You have to come to that conclusion on your own. You can have people hold you accountable. You can have all the bells and whistles with that. But ultimately, when you decide that it's that important to you and that you won't take no for an answer and you will keep trying until you find a way to get it right, that is when you really can unlock that next fitness level that you're looking for. And then the other part I'm going to talk about real briefly is dietary guidance. So basically, obviously, my advice to people is, in a general sense, is that if you don't get anything else right, at least get the exercise part right. At least exercise regularly, do your activity, lift your weights, do all of that. If you don't do anything else, if you mess up at everything else, get that right first, because exercise in the long, long run can make up for a lot of sins. But with that being said, if you get your diet right, you really can unlock levels that you haven't seen yet. But the key with unlocking a good diet for you is not just one that obviously works for whatever your goal is, whether that's getting big or losing fat. The big thing is you want to choose a diet that feels the least restrictive to you. That also works. And that takes experimentation, that takes time, that takes patience to find out what that is. But once you find it, it can become second nature. I don't even think about my diet that hard these days. Like, I have a system in place that feels very easy. I don't really miss how I used to eat. I mean, the only time is like, okay, sometimes I might see people at work that are a lot more loosey goosey with how they eat. Like, they'll just eat whatever you put in front of them. Sometimes I wish I could be like that, but then again, it's like, no, you don't, because I don't even like eating like that. So it's like, What are you really missing? Not much, at least not for me. So, whatever feels the least restrictive for you, find that, and that's how you can get to your goals. Now, I got two other points I want to talk on. First off, what I've been reading. So, I've been reading a book on masculinity. I think I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but I'll mention it maybe next time. But basically, it's studying masculinity around the world and like men trying to chase it and whatnot. And just real briefly, the quote that came to my head as I'm reading this book that became clear to me, at least my interpretation of things, is women are born and men are made. Now, what does that mean? Another way to put that is women are born with value, men have to create it. Now, of course, some might not agree with that, but from my observation, it's basically women kind of like they have value just inherently by being a woman. Like, yes, obviously, they have their own set of problems. They have things that they do that might elevate them in the eyes of others. But ultimately, your womanhood is kind of like it's just that like nobody's gonna question you being like just a woman. They might question other things, but generally they're not going to question like your womanhood the way that they do with manhood. Think about it as a man. How often do you feel like you have to prove yourself? You have to prove that you're a man, that you have to validate your manhood in a number of ways. We all know some of those, it might be through your status, money, women, you name whatever it is you want, you always feel like you have to prove yourself. How many of you can resonate with that? I know I can. Like just to validate like you being a man and not a boy. Like to feel like you're validated in your manhood and you're secure in your manhood and you constantly have to constantly prove yourself again and again and again through all these rituals, through all these things that society puts on you. That's just something that, I hope someone out there resonates with, right? And I have one final rant to end this off. And it's about dating. So, a lot of times with dating, what I tend to see is people tend to think of it like, I want to find somebody that's just right for me. I want to find like a person that has this, that has that. They're attractive, they're mentally stable, they're financially stable, they're, deep into God. You list all these qualities that you want in someone, right? And that's all well and good. Nothing wrong with that. But the thing that you have to come back and ask yourself is let's say you find that person. Let's say that person comes into your life, right? Well, ask yourself, why should that person choose you? Out of everyone out there, why should this amazing person choose you if you yourself are not trying to be amazing? The take home message here is if you focus more on being amazing rather than finding amazing, then amazing might just find you. And with that, I would like to sign off here. That's all I got for today. Shout out to Greenhouse. Shout out to those of you who listen. Really appreciate it. Hope we can get better at this as time goes on. And that's all I have. Thank you.